Thank you very much, Maya. I'm very delighted to have so many of you here today. That's beautiful, and I'm looking forward to a very engaged hour and a little bit. And as Maya said, I'm actually here to help you all to understand the business perspective that will help you grow your business. It's not enough, as some people say now, since 2008, the norm is flat. You know, businesses don't grow anymore, that's just what it is. You all are here because you don't want to believe that. You actually say, no, I want my business to grow, and I want to find a way to do that. And I want to help you today and give you some tools of how you can actually do that. That's my job, and I hope we can work this together in a way that we'll all benefit from it. So, that being said, I just want to quickly introduce Growth River. Growth River is a leadership and executive consulting company, business strategies, and organizational development. So we help businesses really look at what they're doing and help them to grow. And I have several partners here today that will help me answer questions at the end. And we are very excited to work in the Berkshires as well as worldwide. We literally are in Europe, in Asia, in different countries. We are many of us are actually living here in the Berkshires, so we're very happy to work with businesses in the Berkshires. And we're also very happy to go everywhere in the world. We also work with small businesses, from tiny little nonprofits to billion-dollar companies. And that's possible because the system that we use is actually applicable across businesses and across industries. So that's something that's kind of unique. Often consulting companies work in a specific industry, or they only work with big companies. So we actually have a methodology that works all across. So that's why we think we can actually help all of you as well, because, and I'll ask you in a second, if some of you are small business owners, some might not even have a business yet and just thinking about having a business. This methodology actually works for all of you. And I actually have a friend here, Catherine Miller, who is a one-woman show, and she has her own business, and she wants to tell you quickly about her experience of actually working with Growth River, because we want to make it as tangible for you as possible. So Catherine, you want to come up quickly?
Hi, everyone. I am a one-woman show. I started Cosmic Kitchen a couple of years ago. And in the meanwhile, my husband, Robert, had been working for Growth River for a few years. And so it's like the shoemaker, the kids never have shoes. So he was working with this incredible process, and I was kind of going, well, yeah, that's for these billion-dollar companies. That doesn't have anything to do with me. Meanwhile, my business was growing over the 2 years, and I was, as many of you probably have experienced, I was wearing every hat, and it finally got to the point where there was about 20 very important things that I needed to do, and they all seemed like if I didn't do any of them, the whole thing would fail. And I didn't really have the funds at that point to hire anyone else to help me, and I was starting to just not do anything because it was so hard to decide what to do. And at that point, even though Robert had spoken to me many times about the operating system for Growth River, it had really just gone over my head. But he could see I was struggling, so we sat down together, and we very methodically went through the different steps of a certain part of the process, not the whole process that they used, but a part that was relevant to where I was at. And I knew that, I had to look at possibly hiring somebody. I knew that I needed to develop my products. I knew that I needed to develop my own skills. And I knew that I needed to do some marketing. All of these things, plus a dozen more, were very important to me. What was amazing when we sat down is we actually located the thing that was more important than all the other things. And this is the thing I just failed to do on my own. And that was, I needed to develop a marketing campaign. What was also amazing to me, though, it wasn't just that he as a consultant saw it, but it made sense to me. Like, I could see how I could then take that system and use it again and find out for myself what the next step was going to be after I addressed that marketing campaign that I needed to create. So now I'm in the middle of that marketing campaign. I'm already using the system to now foresee what my next step, the next area of the pinch area is going to be and what's going to be the most important priority for me to address. And I feel that's been the most amazing thing about it, because it gave me a tool that I could then take away and use on my own, so even as a one-woman show. So that's basically it. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. So for that reason, I actually wanted to get a show of hands to get a little bit of a sense of what people's situation is in the room. So who is actually thinking about starting up a company? Is there anybody here who is thinking about that? 1, 2, 3, okay, 4, 5, 6. Oh, that's good. How many one-woman shows do we have? How many one-woman businesses? Wow, all right, there we go. Very interesting. Then do we have small business owners that have like a few employees or somebody working nonprofit? Okay, good. And do we have anybody working for a bigger company with working in a bigger team? 1, 2. Okay. So overwhelming response on the one-woman show. That's interesting. Because that's why I thought it was important for Catherine to give you some sense of what her experience was. Because it is actually really relevant for everybody in the room. And even in case you're not falling under any of the categories I just said, if you don't have a job right now and you don't know what you're going to do, you can use the thinking that we're going to apply, even if you work as a volunteer in a nonprofit, if you help in the school, if you work in the community. If you work with a team of people and you have a mission together, you can actually apply this thinking. Because all of those points that we're bringing will be relevant to that. So let me go next step. So this is an example to tell you what I understand to be key conditions. The topic of the talk is key conditions for success. So key conditions for a plant or for a sunflower or whatever that would be you have to have a seed first, then you have to have soil, you have to have water, light, and carbon dioxide. And you have to have those things in the right kind of proportions. You can't have double water and no light, or you can't have double light and no water. You have to have all these things in a kind of proportionate way, and you have to keep sustaining those proportionate things in an optimized way. So the plant is just an example of what key conditions are. Key conditions are a certain set of conditions that help you make something sustainable. So at the bottom it says a context is a set of key conditions that determines the kind of results that are sustainable. So if you want to have a beautiful garden, you need to water it. So there's certain conditions also in a business, and that's what we're going to talk about, certain conditions in a business that will make your business sustainable and will make your business able to grow. And those conditions are what we're going to be talking about today. So we call them the 4 key conditions for team effectiveness or for business growth. The very first part I want to point is actually this little piece over here. It says culture. The first 2 of those 4 conditions have to do with the culture in the organization, how people work together. And the second 2 have to do with business models. A business model is something you choose, how you're going to run your business. So these 4 conditions are also rated in a hierarchy, which means the condition at the top is more important than the condition underneath that. So the vertical way of thinking and acting is the top condition, which is actually the most important thing. Because if you don't think about your business in the right way, you will not be able to be successful long term. So the vertical way of thinking and acting has to do with what is the business leader thinking about? Is he or she busy with day-to-day operational decisions? Or is there space in your mind and do you have time to actually think creatively? Like Jane told me just before we talked, she said, I'm so busy with all the day-to-day stuff, I don't really know how to move forward because I just don't have time. And we hear that so many times, again and again and again. That is a major problem. Even in bigger companies, small companies, when you run your own business, you do everything, as Catherine said, you do everything and you feel like you're totally overwhelmed all the time. But even in big organizations, the CEOs are often way overwhelmed with day-to-day decision making. And it's really important that we find a way, and we'll talk about how to get there, find a way to actually start thinking more creatively and vertically. And I'll explain a little bit more later what that means. The second condition is called a complete system of roles. And that is mostly about who is responsible for what in the organization. It's very important that everybody's clear, and I'll allude to it a little later more. This third one is aligned strategies. Are we clear of what strategies we actually having in the company, what we're advocating, how we're going to make them happen, how we're going to measure them, what is most important as the next step? These are all questions you want to ask yourself. And the fourth one is the competitive advantage. That is about what investment do you want to make that will bring you the highest return. How do you invest your money? Where do you put it to actually make sure that you actually get the biggest return on that? So with that being said, this is the framework for our work tonight. This is basically what we're going to come back to again. But right now I want you to look at the handout and go to page 4. That's where the question set starts. And the exercise we're going to do is we're going to go through this question set. And I have a friend of mine, Elisa. She's sitting right up here. You want to stand up for a second? Elisa, she is a small business owner. She has a jewelry wholesale business. And she has a few employees. And she has been willing to actually work with me a little bit to find out how would this apply to her business. And I'm going to use her as an example, while you also have the chance to think about yourself, what would your answer be, or how do you relate in your business to these questions? So the first question is, what is the dominant impulse of your team? Is it vertical or is it horizontal? What should it be? What is one important implication? And before you answer this question, I will explain to you what vertical versus horizontal actually means, because it's a very important distinction. So the horizontal improvement has to do with wanting to do things right. You want to do things right. You're actually not necessarily thinking about other things you could be doing. You just want to do what you've been told to do or what you're thinking of doing, to do it in the right way so you can manage your risk. You're trying to do, you perform optimal in what you are already doing. In the vertical evolution, what you're thinking about is, what are the right things to do for me, besides what I'm already doing? What are the possibilities for me to actually engage in? So it's a very different way. So one way to assess for you where you are is, okay, are you engaged in putting out fires all the time? Are you trying to keep your business afloat? Are you concerned about day-to-day operational decision-making? Then you're thinking horizontally. That's just where you're at right now. That's fine. We can move from there. If you're thinking about what investment you can make to get out of the current situation, then you're actually thinking about possibilities, and then you're thinking vertically. So then how do you move from a horizontal to a vertical? It actually has to do with considering what is holding you back. What is holding you back? We call that a primary constraint, which is, these little dots, there we go. These little dots here, stars, that's what we call the primary constraint. What it means is, on the left side, you see this curve is just going up and down, like a little worm coming out of the earth and going back and up and down. So what that represents on the horizontal over there is you have some success in your business, but then the conditions change and you just go down again. So for example, for a farmer, because we used the plant before, just think about a farmer. They had plants out there, we have a drought in the summer. What happens? The crops die, right? Well, there's a possibility to change that. If you think vertically, then you think, well, what can I do? You can put in a water irrigation system. Then you will not depend on the weather to provide the water for you. That would be a vertical intervention, which means you actually change the performance that you can sustain. So the primary constraint is the one key condition that most limits sustainable performance. Resolving primary constraints yields the highest possible return on investment and is the fastest path to growth. So what that means is one of the most important things that anyone can do, and Catherine spoke a little bit about that, is to figure out of the 30, 40, 50 things that you consider doing, what is the one most important thing for you to do right now? And then when you have resolved that one thing, there's going to be another one following that is next important. But we have to actually figure out, how do you do that? How do you actually find out what is most important? So I will start with Elisa actually taking the question and take the answers from you. I'll give you a minute for yourself to just think about the questions that we had, which was, I'll read it again. What is the dominant impulse in your team? And if you're a one-woman show, just think about your own way of thinking. Are you, like Catherine was, like busy with 20 things and you don't know what to do? That would be horizontal. So you have actually a scale on your sheet. And you can say, okay, 1 is I'm thinking horizontally, 3 is I'm somewhere in the middle, sometimes I do this, sometimes I do that, and 5 would be that you're thinking vertically. So I'll work it with Elisa, and you can start working on your own sheet. Yeah, come, why don't you come up? You can actually fill it out. Or you can talk and I'll fill it out.
Okay.
Maybe tell a little bit about what your business is, just a 1 second.
Sure. So I have a jewelry import wholesale business. I started it in 1991, kind of accidentally. And at this point, I import silver jewelry with semi-precious stones from India, Nepal, and Thailand. And currently I have 2 full-time employees, 1 part-time employee, and a part-time bookkeeper. At my height, I had 9 employees. That was about 5 years ago. So the recession and also increased price of silver definitely put a spanner in the works. And I'd say just now I'm beginning to experience a spike back in the upward direction. So that's kind of where I'm at currently.
Great. So what is the dominant impulse in your team?
I would say the dominant impulse in my team is about 3.5 at this point.
Okay. Can you say why?
Well, we definitely, and also maybe I should describe it. I spoke about how many employees I have, and then I also have about 10 sales reps around the country, down from 15 a couple of years ago. So I would say we definitely do spend our fair amount of time chasing our tails. So, there is the horizontal aspect of just trying to do things well, and I do have the best team at this point that I've ever had. They're definitely a tight team, and they do an excellent job of keeping things, of keeping things going. The constraint in terms of vertical does have to do with too much. There are certain areas of decision making that are on my shoulders that probably shouldn't be on my shoulders, having to do with
That brings us to the next question.
Yeah.
What should it be? What do you think, where should it be?
marketing.
No, this question is, where should the
Oh.
dominant impulse be? Vertical or horizontal? Where do you want the business to be? Because
At this point, vertical.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so it should be like 5 or 4.5.
Yeah. I'd say, probably 4.5.
Great. And then one important implication of the fact that you're here, but you should be here.
One important implication is we're not making as much profit as we could be. Quite simply, that would be that.
Okay, great. I think we're good for now.
You want me down?
Yep.
Got it.
I mean, you can actually sit up here if you want to. You could actually. Might be good. Yeah. Good, so we got the first question. back to our 4 conditions. Next condition is the complete system of roles. So who is responsible for what and who is accountable for what? In a complete system of roles, every key issue and relationship has a dedicated owner with sufficient authority to play their role. So that's a certain definition that we are using. And I'll explain it with an example, because I actually have been a director of finance at a local not-for-profit for 10 years here in the Berkshires. And in that role, for the first 6 years, I was only doing what I was supposed to be doing, which is do things right. Do the month end, do the year end, do the audit, everything that I was told to do, I was doing it. I was doing it great. I was very good at it. But I had no idea what really my authority was, what really my role should be. I was just told I just did what I was told to do. I just did my job. So then, after 6 years of working there, Growth River came, and Tim was one of the people who came in and said, well, actually, there's things you could do better. One of them is the vertical ways of thinking and acting. And the second most important thing is the system of roles. You actually need to get clear on who is responsible for what. And for me as a director of finance, it was a huge relief to actually find that there is a way for me to know what actually my authority really is. When I came in, I had no idea for 6 years, literally, of what I would be able to do or what I would have authority to do. So the system was changed, the roles were clear, and I actually got authority to do a lot more than I thought I could. And I started to do things like a new reporting system, we implemented a new finance system, I created cash flow tools for the management to make decisions on. I started to be completely creative, and I started to do what was the right thing for me to do. I didn't just stick with what I was told to do. I actually started to be creative and think about it. That was in the position of a director of finance. So when you're a CEO, it's even more important that you are able to do that you're able to think creatively. But the reason why the systems of role is so important, because if you're the CEO and all the decision making is just on you, you're not going to have the time to think. But if you start delegating things to other people, if you have other people to delegate to, then you will free up your time and you will actually find, oh, it's actually really working a lot better if I'm not doing all the decision making, because I just don't have the mind space to do it. If you're a one-woman business, it's going to be different. But what Catherine said, and what also my experience is, it's really helpful to get clear on what different roles are you actually playing as this one person. Catherine is just one person, but she needs to do all different kinds of things. She needs to answer the phone, she needs to do the bookkeeping, she needs to develop her products, she needs to sell her products, she needs to do a marketing plan, she needs to do all those things. But it's important that you are clear about what these different roles are and when you're playing them. For example, it's interesting, I heard some time ago in Europe that many of the small businesses don't make it in the end because they don't write invoices. It's kind of like, what? But it's actually shockingly true that when you're so busy with delivering what you love to do, the services that you love to provide, you don't want to take the time to do the bookkeeping. You don't want to sit down, write the invoices, and do the credit control. But as a one-woman show, you have to do that. The thing is, if you neglect that, you actually can go bankrupt because no money is coming in. And I've heard of people and small businesses that didn't collect money for half a year. And then they were like, I don't have any money to live on. Of course you don't. If you don't ask your customers to pay, then they won't necessarily run after you to give you the money. So these things, that's why it's important also for small businesses and one-woman shows to actually be able to have all that in the picture and make it an important point to do all the different things in the right proportions. So there's one thing I want to add to that, which has to do with the fact that businesses evolve through certain stages. So it's when you're a startup, it's a different situation than when you're in a company for 20 years. And that has implications on the system of roles. So if you just think about starting up a company, for example, a good example is that computer geeks come together in a garage and start a company that 15 years later sell for whatever, $500 million or something. Well, we know those kind of stories. So in the first stage, the individual contributor, people come together, they pool resources, but they are fundamentally motivated by their individual needs. So it's an individual contributor stage. And then at a certain point, they realize, well, when they hire a few more people maybe, then they realize, well, we can't all be the boss, really. We have to actually get one person to take responsibility for the whole. And that's when the directive leadership emerges. There's then one person everybody goes to, and this one person starts to be the person that makes all the decisions, which is fine until the company grows to be too complex. When you suddenly have 100 people that you're trying to organize, everybody going to this one person is going to overwhelm that one person. So at that point, you actually have to start delegating responsibility, and that's when you go to the independent roles and strategies. So that means the top leader starts to delegate responsibility to different people, and different people start to take decision-making power and actually work with the teams together. Might not apply to any one of you here, but who knows, 10 years down the line, you might have a lot of employees. Could be true. And then next stage would be the evolving self-evolving teams, which then means that everybody is actually really engaged and members are working together, the systems are aligned. That's the ideal that we're all trying to get to, which, most companies on this planet are actually not there yet. So, it's the reason why this is important is because how you make decisions and how you delegate is an important part of how you run your business. So the first question I want to ask is actually not in your book. It's actually something I just want for you to think for a second, which has to do, where on the clock do you think you are as a business? And there's no judgment in terms of what's better or worse. It's not about good or bad. It's actually just developmentally, where are you at? So you can apply the right kind of circumstances to your situation. So you can just think about it for a moment. I'm not going to take that from you, but just to think about for a second, like, so how am I set up? I'm just a one-woman business. Well, I guess you could say you're probably an individual contributor, just one person. But the moment you're starting hiring people, you can start to see, I need a bookkeeper, or maybe somebody helps me do the marketing, or somebody's going to help me create a website. All these kind of things, you're starting to have relationships. And then you're starting to have a different set of roles. It's not just you anymore. So we're good on that question. Everybody made up their mind where they are. So I would actually like to know how many people are in the individual contributor stage. Can I see a raise of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. Okay. How many directive leadership do we have? All right. I don't know, do I need to go any further? Is there anybody in independent role strategies? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, good. Great. Very good. Self-evolving teams. Well, we're not there yet. Not yet. So the next set of questions is actually in your books that we quickly want to go through. The first question is, how effective is this decision-making hierarchy? And if you're a one-woman business, how effective are you playing each role? How effective are you playing each role? Which means, are you actually playing each role? Or is there a role that you're not playing or not playing very well? And the second question is, which key decisions do not have effective mechanisms for resolution? Which means, is there an area that you kind of bump up against again and again and again, and every time you're actually not sure why you're not resolving it? Usually it's because nobody's owning it, or you are not educated enough, or you don't have enough training to resolve that one issue if you're a one-woman company. So these are the two questions we want to answer also with Elisa. You want to come up?
So how effective is the decision-making hierarchy?
Yeah.
I would say 4
Okay.
on this.
Do you have a comment on that?
Well, the day-to-day decisions are being made very well by the team. There's particular areas that there's holes because there aren't really necessarily leaders in those areas, or I'm filling those roles of leadership right now, and it's more than I can handle. So.
Which key decisions do not have effective mechanisms for resolution?
As I mentioned before, those would be in the marketing capacity.
Good. Anything else?
I mean, there's different levels of that. There's the website end of the business, and then there's other new strategies, part of the, there's lots of new marketing strategies that I'm aware of that I would like to dive into, but the website is still not optimal.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sylvia, I'm sorry to break my own rule. Will you be explaining to us or giving us a list of what some of these roles are so that we can identify
Yes.
roles we don't even know about?
Yes,
That we need
yes.
to be doing?
That will come under number 4. Right now we go into number 3, but under number 4 this will get clearer. So we're clear, everybody clear on their own assessment of where they are at in regards to this? Good. Then let's go to aligned strategies. Question, what is a strategy? And how do you align strategies? I had the question too, what is a strategy? I actually asked my boss last night because I actually didn't know the definition of it. So, a strategy is a plan to win in a given context. Okay. What does that mean? It means that different people play different roles, and in their roles, they have to advocate certain strategies. Like as a director of finance, I had to make sure that we have a financial sustainable model at the organization I was working at. That was my job. That was my role. If I don't do that, I'm actually not really playing my role. And if I don't do that, the whole organization is missing a part of the picture. So another example is, for example, salespeople often think that the people who deliver the service are very rigid. They don't want to accustom the customers. Why don't they just do what I ask them to do? And the people in deliver say, well, the sales guys, they just sell anything, even if you can't produce it. So there's different strategies in different positions, and it's important that everybody in the organization is clear what their strategy is and what their position is. Why? Because unless you have everybody give their input fully and everybody advocating their strategy, you actually don't have the full picture. You come together as a senior management team and you don't have the full picture if people are not willing to actually say and play to their role and say, as a finance director, I have to bring in this part of the picture. And I felt the pain of this is often really hard because people are so enthusiastic about something and they want to really do it, and then I come in and say, sorry, we don't have the money. And everybody hates you because you know, people think, well, it's just my role. It's not that that's my personal opinion necessarily. I mean, I want to do it too. Emotionally, I want to do it. But I also have to take care of the financial situation of the organization. That's important to me too, and I have to advocate for that. So these different roles are like really important, that you have to see that different people have to advocate for different strategies. And what that creates is there's a certain conflict that comes out. If you're a one-woman show, it's going to be interesting because you're going to be fighting with yourself about what is most important and where to invest the money. If you have a big organization, then you have 4, 5, 6 people coming together and fighting amongst themselves. But the fighting is not necessarily bad. There's a creative tension between people that advocate the real thing that can bring you to a better solution. When people come together in the right spirit and in the right context and actually really say what they really think and what they think brings the whole thing forward, you will find a solution that is better than any one individual could come up with. That's called collective intelligence. That's something that we all can tap into when we really work together. So the creative tension that I'm talking about is a positive thing, and it actually helps you move forward. And you want to harness that by setting up the right roles and the people in the right roles and people actually working together. So the next question that we have on the sheet is going into this. First question is, does every leader advocate a clear strategy to win from the perspective of their role? Is there sufficient creative tension among the roles to drive innovation? Creative tension is necessary to drive innovation. If you don't have creative tension in an organization, it's very likely you will not have any innovation. Steve Jobs, I heard, was a pretty nasty guy from what I've heard, but he actually drove innovation. He was not just satisfied with how things were. He was fighting for it. He was advocating. He was battling. So let's look at that. That's something that I think women might have a harder time actually realizing, that actually it's not bad to have to fight a little bit, to actually really advocate for who we are and what we think. That's something we need to build in ourselves. So, Elisa, you want to?
Yeah. So this area was harder for me to think about, honestly. I think because my team, in terms of, does every leader advocate for a clear strategy? I have a team of people who have, they are, even though everybody has their own area of decision making and leadership, within that context, we're still all working, primarily on, in my office here in the Berkshires, on order fulfillment and customer service. So, and my sales reps would be the primary people to be conferring with in terms of sales strategy. But I don't bring my sales reps together. They're all over the country. I don't have the money. I actually don't have the financial power to be able to afford to bring them together yearly the way that some companies do to work on strategy. And since I communicate with them only by phone and by email, some of them are very communicative and do share their ideas and do push in terms of strategy, and others don't respond at all. So, so this is a difficult area in terms of getting input. So I would say we are kind of possibly 2 on this level.
Mm-hmm. All right. And is there sufficient creative tension?
Well, I would say no.
Okay.
But
Right.
I mean, but but I'm going to also, there is a caveat to that. When we do have regular meetings within my office, and I have over the last couple of years worked really hard to get people to really voice their opinions and take responsibility for moving the company forward. And so ideas are definitely generated, and there is a lot of creative tension in those meetings. Now, I have to say, because we are working somewhat understaffed, the way most companies are these days, it's hard to find the time to do that regularly.
So you give it a 2.5?
2.5.
Great. Thank you. So now we're getting to the last point of what we call competitive advantage. Some of you might have flipped forward already, have seen this kind of interesting model here. And we call it a business triangle. The reason we call it a business triangle is because every business has 3 basic sides of a triangle, which we call developing, selling, and delivering. And then around that, you have something that's called like supporting, which means HR, finance, and all these things. Even if you're a one-woman show, you are doing all those things. And if you're not doing all those things, the business will not work. If you don't do the invoicing, it's not going to work. So you have to do all parts of the triangle. How much you do that, and that's the issue that Catherine had, like trying to figure out where on this triangle is the point where you have a real bottleneck. So say, for example, you have I'm just talking in some kind of units. Let's say you can develop 100 different products, right? You have smart people, they work fantastically, they can come up with all kinds of interesting ideas. You can only sell 40 with your current sales staff. And then you can deliver 60. So right now that means your business is running around in a circle around 40 because that's only how much you can sell. So the most important thing for you is to address the sales issue. So say if you decide, okay, I'm going to on and I'm going to invest and double my sales force. Could be from 1 person to 2 people. I'm not necessarily talking from 50 to 100. I'm talking from 1 to 2 maybe. You will be able to, let's assume you can sell 70. If you don't just double, say, it's going to be not maybe as effective. So you sell 70. Then suddenly you will see, okay, you can develop 100, you can sell 70, but you can only deliver 60. So what is the next investment you need to make? You actually have to put something in to deliver, to increase your capacity to deliver, which means another customer service rep or somebody who can take phone calls to to deal with the customers, or a new car to ship things out, or something of that sort. So you increase your deliver capacity. So what this concept that I just described to you is what is called the primary constraint to growth, which means the primary constraint was first in sell because you didn't have enough people to sell. Once you resolve that, you get to the next primary constraint, which is then going to be deliver. And then it might keep going. It might go back to sales. Once you have increased deliver capacity to 100, then it goes back to sell, because then you would be able to develop 100, sell only 70, and deliver 100. So then what you're trying to do in the business is trying to find again and again and again where in this cycle is the bottleneck. And you resolve that bottleneck, and what will happen is the speed at which you go around the triangle will increase. The numbers that I was talking about the numbers will increase. What that means is that's what business growth is. That's how you grow a business. You always address the primary constraint. That's how you grow a business. So that's the way of thinking in which I want you to kind of internalize, so you can actually really see for yourself in your own business, what do I need to do? And what's the next thing? So for Catherine, she had to do the marketing. Okay, now she's in the middle of the marketing, and now she can start thinking, okay, as I resolve the marketing, what's the next thing I actually need to put invest time into? So then to the question that Maya had is, so what are the different things that we each need to be playing, or these different roles that you're talking about? Well, I have an example of a retail business, because I was thinking maybe some of you own a boutique and a store here in Great Barrington, and you're in a retail business. In the retail business, what it would look like is, in the developed side, you would have somebody to do the merchandising. You're going to decide which designer clothes you're going to have. Is it going to be European, or is it more American-centric, or South America, or what are you going to buy? Then you also the store. Where is the store going to be sitting? It's hugely important for a retail store where they're located. If they're on Main Street in Great Barrington, you have a win situation. If you're somewhere in Housatonic, you might not have a good chance to sell a lot. Then let's go to the sell side. There's the store management, obviously, that has to do with how you welcome your customers, how friendly you are. Then you have maybe a catalog that you can give people when they come in the store, or you mail it out to all the people in the area. You can send them a catalog and say, look, we have all this incredible European-style clothes that you might be interested in. Then you can have, or maybe not, depending on your size, e-commerce. You might be able to have a website, sell things online, or at least attract customers through the website to come to your store. And then you have, how do you display in the store itself? What visual display do you have? How do you put on the pricing? All these kind of things. And then the deliver function would be like the in-store service. When the customer says, okay, I want to buy this thing, how do you wrap it up? Which kind of box do you put it into? Things like that people will remember. Oh, I really liked the person there, and she was wrapping it up beautifully for my gift wrap. So that will have an impact on the next time the person comes in. They already have a certain opinion. It's customer experience that you're actually creating. So this is one.
Where's general marketing besides catalog marketing?
That would be under sell. Marketing is, I mean, there's in large companies you also can have marketing under develop. If it's really related to like an early stage product, you haven't actually put it on the market yet, but you're developing a marketing plan for a new product, you can be under develop.
But by catalog marketing, you mean all of marketing.
Yeah, generally, this is for the retail store, but generally marketing sits under sell. Yeah. So then I thought I'd have Elisa actually work with me through this exercise with her business. And you can take the time, either listen to this or do it for yourself and think about it yourself. What is it in my own business what are these functions that I would have to have? Okay, so I have an empty triangle here. And so we're trying to figure out, so what's on your develop, sell, and deliver side? So you want to start, I'll start writing things out here.
Sure. On the develop side, it's definitely contact and relationship with vendors in Asia. Design. Would quality control go there?
Yeah, can be.
Quality control. Merchandising. What do I mean by merchandising? Special earring cards that might describe the stones. A program of, buy 40 earrings and get a free display. That kind of thing. So developing merchandising. Yeah, I'd say that.
Selling, how do you sell?
My primary mode of selling is with sales reps, so it's developing sample kits, which is very labor intensive. And I have to say, I am unusual in the industry in that most people do trade shows, and I don't do trade shows. So I really depend on my sales reps. Besides that, I do style sheets. So when I go once a year to Asia. When I come back, I create style sheets to send out to customers of the new designs. Mm-hmm. And hopefully they order from that as well. And then I have a wholesale website, and that's a password protected website since it's just for wholesale. And then there's another area that I'm thinking a lot about and haven't started yet, which is other internet commerce possibilities, right? Because there's all kinds of
Like retail, more retail related?
more retail related.
What was that again?
Other internet opportunities, which would be retail, which I've never done.
And that's not yet, it's kind of in
Yeah.
brackets, okay? Delivering.
So delivering is order fulfillment in the office. It's customer service. It's filling orders and shipping, and it's just very important that all of that happen in a timely manner. With especially being able to fulfill as fully as possible. In my industry, people really like things filled full, and that's something that we actually do very well, better than most people in the industry, actually.
Interesting.
It's because I tend to carry too much inventory, so there's a backside to that.
Oh, inventory, that's right, that's actually part of this
What
too.
about over here, which is warehousing? And you have to keep it somewhere.
Yes, I do. Is that part of delivery, or, oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Your house.
Yep.
Yeah, good. That's right.
I have a house/business.
Thank God for an attic or a garage or.
Well, actually, it's more like 80% of my house, and I have a little apartment carved out of it.
So now the next question is, where do you think in this triangle is the bottleneck?
Selling.
And what in selling is the bottleneck?
Well, at different times of the year, I'd say it's different places. So having to do with samples, because it is so labor intensive, tends to be a bottleneck when all of the samples come in, being able to actually set them up and get them out it's very hard to do that in a timely manner. So that's always a bottleneck. At the same time then, I'm trying to get things photographed. I don't know, photography is a big deal of this actually. And getting that done in a timely manner and really dealing with all those photographs, because I have over 5,000 different styles of, so it's a lot. The website for me is the thing that weighs on me the heaviest at this point. And it's very difficult to get retail customers to use the website, even though it's very user-friendly and the people who are using it really appreciate using it. They find it very easy. But retail customers, they hate to have to take 2 minutes to register. So when I started the website, I registered everybody and sent them all their login and password. That went absolutely nowhere. They didn't kind of cognize that that's what they'd gotten. So, so another selling thing that I do, I send out bi-weekly, I send out a web special email, with huge discounts on a particular category of item to try and drive them to the website, to get those discounts. But collecting enough emails from the retail customers and then really enticing them to actually do it is really challenging. So that's a bottleneck for me.
So Elise and I spoke yesterday a little bit, and one thing she said was, well, if I could get the website to be much more effective, my whole business would grow. That's an indication. If this one thing would happen, the whole thing would increase. That's what I would call the primary constraint. So if she would invest into this website.
Yes, but how would she manage it, given that she's doing all those other things?
I know. I've been thinking that, I would like to be able to hire somebody to manage it for me, but that's challenging because somebody has to have some knowledge of the inventory, and that's very hard. Because I'm the one who has all that, knowledge, plus my employees who are already busy doing other things. So,
The thing is, if Elisa knows that's her first priority, your way of thinking will actually focus in on that, and you will start have creative ideas of how to actually resolve it. Doesn't necessarily mean to hire somebody right away or anything like that, but at least this is where you need to focus on, and this is where you need to put your energy, and then it will help everything else to go forward.
Yeah, I could see that because it's, you do feel torn.
Yeah, because you need to take care of all of those things.
Yes.
You can't drop any of them.
Right.
That's the problem. You can't drop any of the things. You need to do all of them. But where do you need to put most of your energy? That's the question.
Yeah. No, right. I mean, because of the percentage of customers who are using the website, their buying is much higher than customers who don't, because the customers who don't, are depending primarily on seeing their sales reps, which they don't, they just don't have time to necessarily have appointments with sales reps every other week. Whereas if they're going onto the website, they can purchase very quickly. So.
Right. Great. Thank you. I hope this was helpful. I mean, that part I find really interesting, because this is where it gets to start. You really work it. You actually really start, I see. If I do this, maybe that can happen. So you actually start to think creatively. And that's what we're trying to do. There's one step further I want to go, which I'm just going to give it really short, but just so you have the concept of that. Looks complicated, isn't really that complicated. All this says is, you see these little boxes up there, deliver, sell, develop, support. This is what we have already been talking about. The only difference in this model is now that you distinguish between different products or different businesses. And businesses can be segmented by geography. You have different P&Ls, of profit and loss. You have significant relationships with certain partners. So there's certain ways how you can distinguish different businesses. The reason why that is important is because different businesses, and each business is one of those triangles. A business is one of these triangles. So the different businesses can have different constraints in different areas. That's important when you grow your business and you have suddenly like 5 different kinds of things that you're doing. She's not just doing silver jewelry, she's also doing, like say for example, the retail thing is an interesting example. When she starts having retail, it's a completely different way of selling. So you can't mix that up with the way she's doing the sales rep stuff. So you have to actually think in a different way. So that's why you have a different business. You have an online business, design business. This is one example here. But the reason I wanted to show you that quickly is because you then see the stars. They mean this is where the primary constraint is in this business. And that means that you know how to act in each one differently. So it's just a little more complex situation, but it's as you grow as a business, it might become relevant.
Is it the case that the A, B, C, D has nothing to do with it?
No, that's just,
That's just happening?
it could be 1, 2, 3, whatever. Yeah. So now that I've explained all those key conditions, hopefully each of you has been able to kind of identify a little bit of what these triangles are for you and where you think your bottleneck actually might be. And that would give you an indication of where you want to invest your money. And in the handouts, you'll see there's actually more to go in the handouts. There's more questions there. And there's also this kind of matrix that I put up here. You can fill that out for yourself. We don't need to do that here. There's a lot more information in these sheets about certain definitions and what is a leader and what is a context and all this stuff. I don't want to go through it. You can read it on your own at home. I think what I want to do now is actually really ask you, what does it feel like to have this business perspective? What did you get from this talk? What do you think you can, is there anything that you think of, oh, that really makes me think differently now? I would like to hear from you what this is, or what do you think you actually gained from this talk? And then I want to open it up to any kind of questions, and Tim and Robert will be here to help me answer those as well.
So can I recommend that we actually have a couple of questions first?
Sure.
And then we look to answer that
Yeah.
question?
Totally fine.
Great, because I know, like, for myself, I'm in the educational social change agency, so I'm trying to translate retail into what do those mean for me, right? And I know that different women here have all different kinds of organizations that they're running. Some are in the arts, some are, they're not retail. So maybe take some time so you can start to ask questions to see how to make this relevant to what you're up for, and then we go back to that. Okay,
Right.
so
Good.
and Tim and Robert were here to add in 2 cents to your question. So if you have a question, raise your hand and I'll kind of get 5 of us lined up and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
We'll start with those 4.
I studied just a little bit of permaculture, that if people are not empowered, the way to empower them is to ask those people. So I realized it was some tools to use. My hope is that we empower more groups or underrepresented to make decisions that benefit themselves. And whoever's making the decisions, typically, they make decisions that keep benefiting themselves, whether it's the 1% who's making the decisions to benefit the 1%, that's why the 99% is struggling. So to reverse that, we have to ask the 99%, so what are your needs, and try to find leaders among them who they would then respond to effectively. Maybe it'll be, potluck dinners or, settings they're comfortable in. Even here, we probably got a certain segment of the population that is not representative of all Berkshire County just coming here, frankly. So, how might we translate this to that other model too that says, trying to give people courage, like we don't have all the answers, and we're trying to help you almost like create your business. You say, what are your needs, and how can we meet them? I mean, I'm real grassroots, like people have to eat and have a place to live, and the higher end profits, like, well, that's a luxury. But I think every person could look at themselves as a business. The mom advocating for their own needs, and we see how women do make a difference, and we didn't even know that. It's like, really? So I just don't know if you could. I know I'm offering something a little different than what this is, but
shot?
No, you go for it.
I mean, the way I would relate to it is that what you've learned today in terms of what is the primary constraint, you can apply to an individual person as well. You can actually look at your life situation and say, okay, what is my situation? What are the conditions under which I'm living right now? And which is the one condition in my life right now? Is it maybe financial? Is it I have too many things to do, you know, I'm taking care of all the kids, or whatever it is? What is the one thing that would have the biggest impact on your life? And start working on that. I think that's the one thing I would recommend in terms of anybody can do that in any life situation. And if people start doing that, they empower themselves. And that's what we really want. We want people to empower themselves and not wait for somebody else to help them out. In a certain way, we help each other by, you know, bringing things like what we're talking about today to consciousness. We're helping each other do that. But in a certain way, people then have to take it onto themselves to actually find what will help them. Anything else you want to say? Good.
Were you next? So I think the process is great in terms of offering clarity in terms of a simple, replicable way to attack a problem. My question revolves around identifying the primary constraint. You know, to stick with this example, the website, you know, seems pretty straightforward. That will move the business forward. But what if the situation is that kind of immediately jumps out as what seems the most important, but there's another, you know, kind of limiting factor there. Like this may not be the case with this example, but you know, 5,000 SKUs was mentioned. So is there an issue with, you know, SKU management, that fewer SKUs may allow more in time and energy to be devoted to the website? So how do you kind of untangle that?
Do you know in your head? So go
Sure.
for it.
Well, there's a certain litmus test that you can do to narrow it down to one of these areas. So every business in the world has to have these 4 areas. The first one, developing, is what you're doing to create value proposition. That means there's a need in the market, and you're creating something that people want. And then you're learning how to communicate that. So that's development. Selling is creating winning purchase moments. And then delivering is fulfilling on the promise you made here. So I've got beautiful jewelry. People believe you, but then you've got to put it in their hands and they need to experience it. Now, considering this model, there are going to be different capabilities or different activities in each one of these sides, and they're just categories, really. You can see it's a closed-looped process, right? Now, if you ask yourself the following 3 questions, you can narrow down where your primary constraint is to one of these sides of the triangle. The 3 questions are, if you can sell more than you can deliver, well, I'll ask you, if you can sell more than you can deliver, then where does your primary constraint to growth have to be, in develop, sell, or deliver? If you can sell 100, but you can only deliver 50, it's in deliver. Okay, now I know I haven't answered your question yet, but I do want to just introduce this because I think it's a helpful tool. If you have a compelling value proposition that's scalable, meaning you really do have a great product. You don't just think you have a great product, you test it, you do some market research, people want it, you can manufacture it, because by the way, this microphone may be the greatest microphone in the world. When I speak into it, it makes me more intelligent and more handsome. Everybody wants it, right? But I can only manufacture 1 a year. That's not a scalable product. So if I've got a compelling value proposition that is also scalable, and I have excess delivery resources, then where's my primary constraint? It's in sell, because it's a great product. I can make it, but I haven't emptied my shelves of it. So I need to invest somewhere in sell. And then if I don't have a compelling value proposition, and there's ways you can discover that, or if it's not scalable, then you need to go back to your product development. Now, once you identify that first level, then you need to do some root cause analysis, which is what you're pointing to. You're saying, well, how do you really know it's the issue? And a lot of times, on the surface, it does look like it might be the website, but actually, it could be Alicia's mindset, right? It could be the culture that she's created in the organization. It could be that when I was referring to her mindset, it could be that, it could be Alicia, I'm not asserting this in case. It could be that she's unwilling to delegate lesser priority activities so that she can focus on the higher priority activity. Now that's a different kind of constraint, right? It's not just in your go-to-market cycle. It's actually where Sylvia listed the 4 key conditions. It's at the top. It would be vertical ways of thinking and acting in the system of roles, not just your go-to-market cycle. So you're absolutely right. You need to look deeper, and oftentimes what looks like a sales issue is actually because the product is not good enough. So sometimes we figure out, oh, we keep adding more salespeople, but really the market doesn't want what we got, so we actually have to go back. So it does take, it's a really iterative process, and usually when we work with corporations, we go into the nitty-gritty. We use a much more comprehensive tool set to collect data, and then we're able to help those leaders test their theories by really applying them. So it's a much, much, much bigger conversation to go there. But you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's something that you're kind of following the thread, right? So we're starting with, we think it's a website issue, and if we were to keep working with Alicia, we could probably figure out where it was. Maybe it's something like you were referring to.
I'm wondering if there are any types of business, any sectors, or any stages of business development where you see innovation to be the primary constraint with software. Have you ever seen that?
Definitely. And when I talked about the system of roles and said that that innovation only occurs if you have actually creative tension.
I mean, too much innovation.
Too much innovation.
Oh,
Yes,
sure.
definitely.
Yeah.
Margot? I mean, definitely, because one of the things that we said about the triangle is it has to be balanced. If it's completely out of balance, if somebody's just constantly creating, but you don't put any energy into selling or delivering, you're not going to have anything. So it has to be in the right balance. When you have developed enough, you actually have to stop developing for some time to be able to put the energy into sell and deliver.
We have our beloved founder and CEO, Richard Hawks. He's a little bit of a mad professor. And right now we are constrained at Growth Rivers in sales. We have more delivery capacity than we have contracts with clients. And we're working on that. Richard, who is our most effective sales guy, he's been at this for 20 years. This whole methodology came out of working with literally hundreds of leadership teams, from the biggest to the smallest. And by the biggest, I mean the biggest. Big pharma, big banks. Richard loves to be in the back room, developing the programming, doing the coding. He says really it's his first love. It's such an intellectual treat for him. And our job, and we recently conquered his passions, is to bring him out of the back room, because our constraint is in sell, not in develop, and yet he really loves to develop. Now there's an argument to be made about defining your value proposition so it can be sold. But what we began to realize is that he had moved too much in the direction of, wait, we can add one more little piece. We can do this, and if we do that, then it has ripples back to this, so we have to go back and change this.
Yes.
Yes, it is a variation. No, it's not really a variation.
We call it functionality.
It's founder syndrome. But, and now he's in the sales game, and it's pretty impressive. But Sylvia's point, which is really key, is it has to be balanced. What key capabilities do I need to optimize in order to ensure that I can effectively go to market, develop, sell, deliver? And by go to market, we use business language. This applies equally to nonprofits. Just to give you an example, for a nonprofit, who are you selling to? You're selling to donors. So I want to say that, because this works for a lemonade stand, and it works for a multinational corporation.
Okay, yes, Jim. I'm in arts and education, and partially, we live in the Berkshires where there's an influx of people who come in the summer, and then there's this change in season and people leave, and so we have a larger population here, during part of the year, so my business booms in the summer, and now, what? That's why that's my question. Any response to that? I mean, that's my primary constraint.
Have you considered winter sports? I'm serious, right? That would be a vertical way of thinking. So if you're like, I do business in the summer, are you referring to your sports business, Jill, or?
No, I do circus arts, and actually I've gone into the schools, so but it changes, right? So I'm talking about my circus business, which, you know, I do a summer camp and do circus arts, and I'm actually doing some of that. So it just changed a lot. You know, it'd be great if I could do more in the summer, but, you know, it's just, how do you just make it work?
Yeah. So
12 months.
I would ask you to look for what is it that you're really doing which gives you a competitive advantage.
Well, I'm the only one doing circus arts in the first year.
Okay, but what is it in you that actually, is it a certain type of creative intelligence that you have? Is it a certain
Yes.
kind of passion you have for working with
Yes.
children? You know,
Yes.
like what's the DNA that gives you your competitive advantage? Once you understand that, then you can think about new businesses and new ways to go to market that are not going to be limited by external factors. So for example, if I'm in the water business, water refreshments business, I'm just taking something at random, right? I bottle water, right? Then I probably don't want to go into the colored markers business. It's too big of a stretch, right? But what is it that makes me a good water business? I don't know. Maybe it's probably I've got some exclusive access to water, or I've got some ability, which I'm not saying I've got my own personal opinions about that, but I'm not going to go into those. Or I have some ability to do it more cost effectively than my competitors do. Or I've got some sales channel for bringing it to market that my competitors don't have, right? But what is it at the heart that I do really well? Let's say in this case, they are able to do it because this company can do it because they've got exclusive rights to a water spring, and they're doing it in some remote area where they pay lower labor rates, and they've got a really cost-effective infrastructure for doing the bottling. Then, I know it's a really boring example, but it's a real one. So if they wanted to go into a new business, it wouldn't make sense for them to go into the markers business. They would want to think about something that's related to water, like maybe soda or some other type of beverage. And then they would want to leverage the same infrastructure they have for going into a new market. Now, if people only drank water in the summer, maybe there's another beverage that they like to drink in the winter. So, was that helpful, Jill? Somewhat?
It sounds like kind of what I do, but yeah.
You know, it's a vertical way of thinking. It's about considering what you really do, what's your DNA, and then thinking about how to leverage that.
One, two, is there any other questions that we want to line up with? Come along. Okay, so 1, 2, Serene, and then Elise.
I actually want to give Jill a thought. If you do the circus business in the summertime, and you're talking about schools, what about all the youth centers all over Berkshire County? I mean, they run after-school programs, or during vacation programs. I mean, I know one of them well, and they could use you.
Okay, well, I can respond to that, but now's not the time.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you.
Actually, I would also love to hear you talk about, because I have a consulting business. So a whole lot of these things are relevant for a consulting business completely. But all the things you've been talking about are concrete. I'm selling what's, pardon me?
Services.
Services, exactly. But even some services are concrete. Consulting is in my head. If my head goes somewhere else, there's a problem with that. And actually, I've experienced that. So, no, that what happened was I had brain surgery, and believe me, when your livelihood is consulting and all of a sudden your brain is a little whacked, not a good thing. But you didn't talk about intangible kinds of businesses. You talked about tangible ones.
I mean, we apply the same thing to our consulting business as well.
Yeah.
We do the same thing, develop as Robert said, we have Richard, who is our main developer. We have sales, all consultants are involved, and we have deliver, which is we go out to our clients and we actually deliver the service. We consult with clients. Me standing up here is part of deliver, I would say.
Right.
So very same concepts, we totally apply them to ourselves. So they totally work for consulting, I can guarantee you, because we are in it, we're living it.
When you say tangible or concrete, you're saying like a manufacturing business.
You were
or
talking
retail.
about the jewelry retailing business, the water bottling.
Well, just to take the example, we have what we call the Leadership OS, our operating system. It actually is an operating system. We've developed it. It has a very clear value proposition. It has to do with re-engineering corporate or nonprofit or any kind of organizational culture, so that groups of people can come together, identify those conditions that that if optimized will make success inevitable. So we have a sales process, and we have a whole package of delivery, and it's a service. And it doesn't really matter. The larger point is that if you're creating stone tools and trading them for skins, or you have a lemonade stand, or which are products, or you have a service, say it's a massage service or something, you're developing a value proposition, you're shaping it to speak to a marketplace, to a target audience, a target demographic, you're creating successful purchase moments, money changes hands, and then you're delivering.
Yeah.
So it's universal. I can't think of an organizational system, sole proprietorship to a large organization, a church, a school, that if you boil it down, doesn't boil down to these three things. I'm trying to find one, and I can't think of a single one.
I'm just laughing about
It's complex.
This doesn't work for now.
It does. Some of our clients, though, and we have our quasi-governmental, and the challenge for them, their primary constraint is that they don't think like this, but this is in fact what they're doing.
Right, exactly. That's true for many nonprofits. They don't think that.
That is true.
To reiterate, we think that this works for products or services.
So my question is around one thing that's missing, I think, is pricing, like a price point, and the importance of that, and the whole cascade. If you use, is it Alicia? Alicia's example, if you could shift, some of the reasons why the website probably isn't working, she doesn't have the money for that. She doesn't have the money going back to that. And she's got this, bulk of inventory. So I guess where does price fit in? Because you could use that in both examples. Like if Jill had the capacity as a one-woman show to go to all these schools, what would be the price point? Because she's one person. She can't go to 35 different schools. So what, you know what I mean? So how do you figure the right price break in that without being overpriced? And I think what happens with women a lot is that they undervalue. They underprice. And they can't really grow because they're stuck.
Where do you think pricing would be? Develop, sell, or deliver?
Develop.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a capability, it's a function, it's an activity that needs to occur. Sometimes it might be your leverage point for getting more profitable, and therefore having more working capital to reinvest in your business. Let me give you an example of a client we were working with, just to help us think out of the box. They were a food services company, so they would actually sell rice and beans and vegetables and meats to restaurants. They were not very strong in the marketplace. But usually when you buy a bag of rice, I think it comes in like a 50 or 100 pound, it's huge, and it takes up a lot of space in storage. And what the company began to realize that was selling the products was that their truck drivers were actually the main interface between the restaurateurs and their business. So they needed to empower these truck drivers to actually sell more food. So they tried to figure out what was the real need that the restaurateurs had. And in this case, it was that they have very little storage. And, and rice is really just a commodity. It's not something you're really going to compete on or make a lot of profit on. But what they figured out to do was to make much smaller packages of rice. And so what happened is the restaurateurs were more willing to actually start the dialogue with the truck drivers because they could actually buy smaller packages, which made a lot of sense for them, which then opened them up to looking at the rest of the products and services, and then they actually were able to grow by just offering a different size product to their customer. Also, where I'm trying to go to this is you want to think about your sales channel. So if we're thinking about Jill going around to 35 schools, I'm not just talking about delivering, but just trying to sell her services, that's not scalable. But if she could find some sort of a partner, maybe some type of organization that does work in schools in the region, and she could partner with them, they can become a marketing partner and they can actually sort of guide her to where the opportunities might be. So I think it's a lot of times thinking about how you can get leverage, which is kind of what you're talking about, I think, with price. I'm not going to take on...
I'm not talking about price, I'm specifically saying how, is there something in this rubrics where you're at the right price? Like, does Elisa know she's at the right price? That's what I'm saying. Does Jill know she's at the right price? And what steps do you do to get to that?
Marketing research is usually what companies will do to figure out if they're at the right price point. And also, if you raise your price and you lose a lot of customers and your revenues go down and profitability goes up, you got to look at the numbers, basically. Before we move on, I gave you an answer that you weren't even looking for, but did we get to it for you?
Elisa, and then Rosa, and then Mary, and then Anne.
So I was just wondering, is the goal of this methodology to be able to empower, perhaps this is obvious, but to empower a company to use this methodology? So I assume once I take care of this constraint, I'm going to ask the question, where's the new constraint? And so how long does it take, a company typically to, be able to take on this methodology on their own?
I think it was good what Tim said before, that actually, we have to actually really get clear what your constraint really is, because there might be more behind the scenes that we haven't had time to actually explore. But once we do, and I think Robert is pointing to Catherine, I don't know how long you have been involved in it, but I would say 3 to 6 months is usually the process in which you're trying to figure out what is really the constraint, and you start working it, and you start to look at the next constraint. It depends on the size of the business, but, Catherine.
I think there's probably a range there depending on the complexity of the business and how many people are involved in it. But for me, we literally sat down and spent maybe a couple hours, and I mapped it out, and then I acted on it. And it could have been that when I acted on it, I saw, there's actually a little bit more. The marketing campaign is actually, there's something under that. But I was able to act on that really quickly. I got enrolled 3 times as many people in the next cleanse that I offered that I had the time before that. So I got results right away. Now, you have to keep reapplying that strategy over and over and be willing to keep looking and digging to see, okay, what's really happening here. But I mean, for a small operation like me, I found I was able to implement it right away and get results just from
I think you can implement it right away, but it will also take some time for the effect of the implementation to show you really where the next constraint is.
Sure.
And that's why I'm saying 3 to 6 months for you to actually see, now that I'm dealing with this, where does it actually go? I mean, you can anticipate it to some degree, but when you actually do it, you will find out where the next thing is. And the goal is, as we said, the goal is really for organizations or individuals to be able to identify that themselves. So they start actually applying this methodology themselves over and over again, so they will always know where to invest the next money, where to invest next, where to invest next. So that's
Yeah, I was just curious about when you asked about where the pricing was. You said it was in the developing, and I see on the handout that you have marketing strategy under developing, whereas advertising is under the selling. So I was just kind of curious, because it seems like it's kind of a function that straddles both or something. So
Yeah.
just if you wanted to say more about that.
Yeah, the marketing strategy, if it's underdeveloped and it relates to usually new products or things you're just developing that you haven't actually put into the market yet, and you're just thinking about doing the market research, you have this new product, how can I sell it, what is the customer's expectation, and you actually work the whole thing. Once you have the product on the market and it's like an ongoing thing, the advertising and maybe refining the marketing strategy, then it's usually on the sell, because then it's a tool of how you can sell better. But as long as it's you're actually talking about a new product or a new stream or a new, like I said, you go from water to soda, in the first phase of developing your strategy, it would actually be under development.
Susan, this is something that a lot of people get confused about. And back to the system of roles, and not to be schizophrenic, but we all wear, in sole proprietorships, we all wear many hats. And Sylvia's point, which I think is a really important point, you just have to know which hat you're wearing when. I'm concentrating on this issue right now, this capability right now, because I know that it's going to create the possibility for the next capability. What happens a lot in a lot of sole proprietorships, you do an ad campaign. You sit down, you've got to write copy for your ad. What are you going to say? How are you going to price it? That's not really an advertising question. That's a value proposition marketing question. And this may sound a little academic, but I find it helpful to sit down and kind of go, okay, what is it that I'm trying to bring to the market? What's my value proposition? What is the value that I'm proposing to offer people that they're going to give me money for? And who is the people? And what do they need to hear? Who's my target demographic? If you just wear that hat, I'm in the develop mode, I'm in the marketing mode right now, the process of writing that advertisement is going to be a lot easier, or a lot more focused. Oftentimes what happens is people that's conflated, and it gets very confusing.
Thank you.
Great, it's been very interesting just to get clarity around a person who's doing, I'm doing a sort of a one-woman show. And what I find the most confusing is just being inundated with so many things and having to choose which one. So the idea of finding that one place that can manipulate the next place is most important. But there really is not enough time. And something always falls off. And I'm always like trying to catch it as it almost hits the floor or it crashes. And so my stress level is high. I'm trying to do, is that a problem with the initial step in the development? There's just too much that I'm trying to do?
I think you're among many.
None of our clients have this problem.
That's the whole reason why this methodology is even important, because of the situation, right? If there was enough time, then you can just do whatever, invest in everything. But the thing is, important for you to know is what do you need to invest in? What is the most important part you need to invest in? Time also is an investment. It's not just money we're talking about; it's time. So if you know this is the absolute most important thing, then you will spend more time on it to resolve it, because it will allow you to grow. And then as you grow, you might have more money to be able to actually hire people to do a few little things, like a little bit of bookkeeping here, a little bit of website there, a little bit of, so you slowly get things either outsourced or delegated or whatever you want to do. But you start where you are, and you might have to start with what's most important right now that I need to invest in so I can grow. That's always the starting point.
It's a priority.
Yeah, the priority.
Mary, if we were to put an Apple store in downtown Great Barrington, let me back up. Let's think about any retail store, right? Location is probably the most important condition, more important than the products. Would you agree? Because if I put an Apple store on Main Street in Great Barrington, I put one in Beckett, and the one in Beckett had superior products, and the one in Great Barrington had inferior products, who's going to actually be more successful? If any of you have ever been to Beckett, you know that the only thing in Beckett are mosquitoes. So if I were to... Exactly, the Dreamaway. That's where I got that, actually. I was at the Dreamaway, and it was so beautiful, and the owner said to me, you know why this place, you know why you can't confuse this for heaven? The only thing that makes it different? The mosquitoes. So, if I were to invest time and energy into improving the products in the store in Beckett, that would be a complete waste of my time and energy. So there's got to be, in your business, one thing that is the priority over everything else. And that's the hard part, because we're usually so deep in the forest we can't see the trees. So when you have some type of an objective outside, process, a consultant, a friend, somebody, and probably any other woman in this room could work with you and just give you some type of mirror to help you think through, okay, well, I think it's here and this is important, but it's not as important as creating a website that I can actually have my customers, I can scale my sales activity because I make it more easy for them to use or just compelling for them to use. If Elisa doesn't do that, she's going to maintain a horizontal growth pattern. If she does do that, and other things are going to drop off the plate, it gets uncomfortable, right? When the other things start to drop, or if she has to delegate responsibilities to other people, and they're not going to do the job in, what's something else, sample kits? It's pretty important. You probably want to oversee that. You might have to let that go, right? And now we're in the mindset realm, right? And also what happens in leadership and developing others is we usually have to let people do it like 3 times worse than we can for a period of time. And it costs us money because they're going to make mistakes that cost us money, but it's the only way to actually get them up to the level where they can do it without our intervention. And that's why there's really a balance between the horizontal and vertical. Most businesses want to keep somebody who does a job well just in that one spot forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. The problem with this is people won't develop them. Whereas the human resources leaders are usually advocating for moving them around to different roles so that they can actually get more experience, so they can be better for the business overall. But if I'm only thinking about quarterly profits, all I care about is that, wow, that person does sample kits perfectly. I'm never going to let them do anything else because I need that. But if you want to take a vertical perspective and long-term sustainable growth, you've got to think about how you're developing that person to think about marketing strategy, about sales, about deliver, about all of it, the whole business.
Yeah, it's sort of related. It's about this question of hiring. Because it seems that there comes a point with a small business where you just have to hire somebody. And the economics of that. So let's say for Elisa, she starts out thinking it's your website, she does more inquiry, and she ends up realizing, no, it's because I'm taking care of too many little tiny jobs that somebody else should do. But I cannot afford to hire somebody. Where you get to that economic point where you have to dish out what you don't necessarily have in your budget, where do you go?
I think these are questions of finance.
Well, I think when you talk about investment into something, you might have to actually invest money, and maybe you need to get a small business loan or something. If you really believe that this will actually grow your business, you will get the return on it. So you might have to take a $10,000 loan or something to get somebody part-time to do this job. Why? Because you actually think it really will change the paradigm, the context that you're working in. It will increase the box that you're working in.
But how bad would it be if you borrowed $10,000 and actually spent it on not resolving your primary constraint to growth? Then you're in a double bind. But when you know beyond, you can never know for sure in business, really. There's some risk mitigation. But when you've really done the analysis and you're pretty confident that the root cause is something, and you get not only yourself but usually a whole team to focus on resolving it, the return on that is that you see profitability go up in the shortest amount of time possible. So if you do the work, and this is the work that a lot of people avoid because it's the heavy lifting, it's the analysis, well, how do you know you actually have a compelling value proposition? How do you really know? If you feel good about it doesn't mean it's a good value proposition, right? You've got to go actually to your target demographic and ask them. You've got to ask them versus the competitor. Do they actually see you as the provider of choice, right? What's the price that they would pay for it? So these are sometimes the work that has to go into actually really finding out what your primary constraint to growth is. But when you know what that primary constraint to growth is, there's no better investment you could possibly make. And that's one of the key takeaways, and I think that's probably, I mean, our methodology is very comprehensive. We teach it in universities sometimes. It takes executive teams, people with MBAs and even PhDs in business, years to actually grok the whole what would you call it, gestalt, the whole gestalt, and to have the entire team really understand how to apply it on an ongoing basis. So without going into, the voluminous sort of areas that we could, we thought the way we could actually give you the most value would be to focus on, to help you guys just think about what is that one top priority. And if you can walk out of here tonight understanding what that is, instead of when you walked in here thinking it was 12 different things, then we've done our job.
That seems like a good note to end on, so.
That's great.
Thank you. We never got to your question. We didn't answer the question that you asked us. I don't know, is there somebody who wants to just, or has an insight that they want to respond to Sylvia's question as we all walk out the door? Did something open up that you can see, or do you have some kind of an insight? It's fine.
I think we can also, I'll also maybe assess, I can walk around afterwards and take it.
And while Andrew's sharing that, if you could just take the moments to fill out the feedback form, so that then you drop them off and then we're all doing our exchange. Yeah, Andrew, what do you want to say?
So this is very simple, but I can relate to so much of everything, that everybody's been sharing about being a one-person shop and wearing all the hats and getting completely overwhelmed and all that. And at a certain point in your presentation, because of what you were saying and how you were presenting it, I realized that one thing I'm not doing effectively as a business owner is caring about the business. I'm caring about creating the product, and I'm caring about getting it all done, but I feel like I'm inside this box, which is really excruciating at times. And I felt like suddenly there was like a breath of fresh air, thinking, oh, right, I'm a business owner, but I'm not really caring about the business in the way that you're speaking about it in this very simple model. And that was like a very aha moment for me, because I thought, so that to me felt like a real primary constraint, just having that little bit of objectivity on that. And then to feel how we're all in this together, because we're all in the same box. So anyway, thank you.
I'm happy also to just talk with people afterwards and, can get your feedback directly. So. You can have some business cards here as well if people want to follow up.
Did you want to say something? I just wanted to say that for me, the biggest thing was being given permission to actually focus on one thing. Because we do all feel that we have to do everything at once. And yeah, that actually you'll be more productive if I heard what you were saying correctly, that you'll be more productive if you focus on one thing. And the most important thing. And then the next most important thing. And that to me is very freeing to think, oh, I can do that.
Great, thank you all. We hope you can continue to join us in November and December. Thank you, Rose River. They're going to linger here, so if you want to ask them more questions,